The subject of climate change has gathered pace in recent times, and the focus has been on decarbonizing the planet Earth. And when I think of the subject of decarbonization, I see it really in two buckets. The first is the corporate bucket, and the second is the sovereign bucket. In the corporate buckets, you have a variety of players, and the impact and the manner in which they respond, I suspect, will differ. First, we have the international oil companies, the big players, ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, Eni, etc. Among these corporations, you see a difference. The Europeans have seemingly been very quick off the mark, largely because of civil society activities in this part of the world, but also the regulator has been much more aggressive than their American counterparts. The result of which is that you see a slight lag between what the international oil companies in Europe are doing and what their American counterparts are doing. In the same space, you then have the state-owned entities. The state-owned entities have been very slow to move as far as I can tell, whether you're looking at the Gulf, the Emiratis, the North Africans, and the Africans in the west and south of the continent. And then finally you have the smaller players, some of them publicly listed, but some also are privately owned. In this space, the international oil companies have enough resources, enough agility, and capacity to be able to transit very quickly from fossil fuels into the clean energy space. They have the capacity to do that. Many of the state-owned entities also have the capacity, but my sense is that because the national economies are so dependent on fossil fuels, they will be slower to move. As usual, the juniors who are below the radar screen will watch and wait and try and capitalize on the niche markets that will arise out of the momentum. And then we move into the sovereign space. Here again you have large producers whose economies are almost entirely dependent on oil. Many of these countries also are in the world's global south, with the exception of countries like Norway, which is largely dependent on oil. Many of the oil-dependent economies are in emerging markets. Here we see a difference again. The likes of Norway, the likes of the United States, the likes of the Netherlands, the likes of the UK, though major producers of oil, are not necessarily economically dependent on oil because their economies are very diversified and resilient. And so they can walk away from fossil fuels without any material damage to the national economies. The same cannot be said for the likes of Angola. The same cannot be said for the likes of Algeria. For that matter, the same cannot be said for the like of Nigeria. These countries walk away from fossil fuels in the short term to their peril. That said, as damaging as decarbonizing the economy might be, they too do not have a choice because one, they'll come under pressure from multinational entities with whom they do business. They'll come under pressure from international development finance institutions. For that matter, to the extent that the international oil companies walk away from oil, to the extent that some of them are the largest investors in Africa and Latin America and South Asia, when they walk away from oil, the countries will be left with no choice but to follow suit. So in conclusion, the decarbonization of the planet Earth is not about national economies and their survival. It is not about economic justice. It is not about those in the global north tidying up after their own environmental damage. Instead, it is about saving the planet. In the longer term, sadly, there will be winners and losers. My sense is that those who are agile to move fast and move quickly will reap the benefits of transition to clean energy, but those who drag their feet will likely be on the losing end.